Hello, Internet. It is I, the Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Predictions. Folks, it is time. The time is now. Today we talk about the big one, the biggest one. We talk about Spider Man No Way Home, the most anticipated movie since Endgame. It's a movie that's been discussed ad nauseum for over a year now, and it's finally out. We can finally see it, and now I can talk about its box office. And this is going to be quite a lengthy video because there's a lot to discuss. So buckle up because it's going to be quite the ride. So yeah, yeah. With that intro being said, we're going to talk about Spider-Man. We're going to talk about the pros and the cons. Yes, there are cons. They're not major cons, but there's still something to note. So I'm still going to talk about them. But yeah, talk about pros and cons. But anyway, let's just get started. Let's do this. Pro number one, it's Spider-Man. Like, do I need to go further with that? Like, Spider-Man is like one of the most iconic characters ever. Not just in comic books, but in all just in media in general. I mean, Spider-Man's been in everything. Comic books, shows, games, and eventually the movies too. Like the movies themselves, like he's been in the movie since like nearly 2 decades. So it's the very first Spider-Man movie in '02 from Sam Raimi. Okay? From all those movies, to all the games, to all the comics, to the cartoons, from like the 1967 cartoon that got memed on with the pointing, to the 90s cartoon, to uh what was it, Spectacular Spider-Man. I know a lot of people like that. But yeah, Spider-Man, even the games, like the movie games, Spider-Man PS4, Ultimate Spider-Man, that's a underrated one. Yeah, Spider-Man's just been everywhere for the longest time. Like he brand name recognition just applies 100% here. So yeah, Spider-Man as a whole is a big old pro here. He's like, even if a Spider-Man movie is somewhat lackluster, a decent amount of people will still watch it. Okay, that shows you how strong of a brand Spider-Man is. Okay, so Spider-Man's name is a pro here. Easy. So that's pro number one. Pro number two. This is, well, we're going to talk about the movies now. The movies have been big. Some haven't been great, but they've still made money. And let's just start with the original Spider-Man movie. It came at a time where the superhero movie was kind of dead a little bit. I mean, the 90s killed the genre, especially Batman Robin. That was like, and Steel and Spawn. Those were like the nails in the coffin. But it slowly but surely got back on its feet with Blade, and then it had a lot of progress with X-Men. But Spider-Man changed everything. That just blew the roof off of the whole genre. Like that movie broke all the records back in '02. Like biggest opening weekend. It was the first movie to make more than 100 million in opening weekend, which I mean now that seems pretty simple. Well, maybe not now, like a couple years ago. It was really simple, but back then it was unprecedented. And then you got the first movie, then you got the second movie, which also made an extreme amount of money. Not quite as much as the first, but still a large amount. And then even Spider Man 3. Sure, it's a meme gold mine now, but back then it wasn't very good. But even that movie broke opening weekend records. It made over 150 million in its opening weekend, which is still the record for a Spider-Man movie. Granted, it may not hold that record for much longer, but it still has the record. But that was just the Sam Raimi trilogy, and that trilogy was massive. It did wonders for the superhero movie genre. And then even with like the Mark Webb movies, the Andrew Garfield movies, with the Amazing Spider-Man movies, Like they didn't do too bad. I mean, they're not great movies. Spider-Man 2, May Spider-Man 2, I straight up don't like at all. But they still made money. Like first May Spider-Man $750 million. Second one 700 million. That's nothing to sneeze at. But because those movies were expected to do a lot better, it ultimately led to the deal between Marvel Studios and Sony to where they share the property so that Spider-Man can be in the MCU, and that's how we got him in Civil War, and that's what led to the next run of Spider-Man movies, the Home Trilogy. I like to call them because they all have home in the title. We start with Spider-Man: Homecoming, which was a really good movie, and it made way more than the Amazing Spider-Man movies, so it was off to a good start. And then the sequel to that, Far From Home, was the first Spider-Man movie ever, ever to make $1 billion. The Sam Raimi movies couldn't do that. The Mark Webb movies couldn't do that, but Far From Home did, and that and that was the predecessor to this movie. So yeah, like Spider-Man movies make a shit ton of cash. Like they just do. And the last one was the biggest of them all. And I haven't even mentioned Spider-Verse, which although wasn't as big as the live action ones, it still did very well for itself. It got a lot of love. It got a lot of awards, and it's getting a sequel next year, which is already getting a lot of hype. So, yeah, like especially now, like Spider-Man movies, they couldn't be doing any better. They really couldn't. It's like the best position ever. So yeah, Spider-Man in film, big old pro there, especially with the recent ones. So that's a massive pro. So that's pro number 2. Pro number 3. This is an MCU movie. MCU is the biggest brand ever. I mean, let's just look at the facts here. Marvel Cinematic Universe. Psh. Okay, domestic, worldwide. Just look at these numbers: 2.7 billion, 2 billion, 1.5, 1.3, 1.3, 1.2, 1.1, 1.1. That's Spider-Man Far From Home. 1.1, and then 800, 700, 600. These are massive numbers. Like the franchise as a whole has made $23 billion worldwide, and that's only going to increase with this movie. Sure, they've stumbled a little bit recently with Black Widow and Eternals. Shang-Chi did fine. But yeah, those didn't do too great, but granted, they were in a bit more of a screwy situation. Black Widow had the Disney Plus Premier Access thing going against it. Eternals had to deal with the fact that nobody knew who those characters were, and this movie didn't look all that interesting, and turned out to not be very interesting. Shang-Chi, I mean, there's not much to complain about there. It's the biggest movie of the year domestically, which again won't last too long. It's definitely not going to last too long. But still, the MCU as a brand is still extremely strong. Like, has a lot of power over like the average consumer. Like, when there's a Marvel movie out, people will watch it. That's just how it works. And this will be no exception. Like, no exception at all. So yeah, MCU movie, another big old pro right there. So that's pro number 3. Pro number 4 is what's in this movie. I'm not giving away any spoilers, okay? Anything I talk about was in the trailers and in promotional material. So it doesn't count as a spoiler in my book. All right. So with this movie, there's a lot going on here, especially as someone, and there's even more going on if you actually seen the movie like me. But I'm not going to spoil anything. But this movie, obviously, if you've seen Far From Home, you know how it ends. You know the cliffhanger that it was left on. To where, spoiler for Far From Home, a movie that's like over 2 years old. Like, how have you not seen this? But Mysterio dies, but before he dies, he uh not only frames Peter for his murder, but he also reveals that Peter is Spider-Man. Right? Now the whole world knows. Okay? And Peter's life starts getting really screwed up, so he goes to Doctor Strange for help. and he tries to make a spell to like make sure everybody forgets who Spider-Man is, but Peter screws up the spell, and so shit gets crazy. And the big old gimmick with this movie are the villains, because these aren't like new villains. These are villains from other Spider-Man movies. We're talking Green Goblin. We're talking Doc Ock. We're talking Electro. Even Sandman and the Lizard. All here, which is just pure insanity. If you ask me, that's some crazy stuff. Stuff I never thought I would see ever in a movie. So yeah, we got some multiverse stuff going on. Once people heard about that, once people knew that Jamie Foxx and Alfred Molina were going to be in this movie, people started to lose their minds for certain reasons that I won't say. But yeah, once people saw them in the trailers, everyone the hype just escalated so much. It's still continuing to escalate. Like it's wild. And like that type of gimmick is going to help this movie and then some. Like it's a very strong gimmick that will work out to this movie's favor. So yeah, having previous Spider-Man villains in this movie, the whole multiverse thing, big old pro. That is the biggest pro ever. Like, who's not gonna want to watch that? Honestly. So that's pro number 4. Pro number 5. We're still going. The reviews for this movie are stellar. It's in the high 90s right now. It's like a 95% last I checked on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score is at 99% after like thousands of reviews already. And it's just this was just from Thursday. So yeah, like reviews are beyond stellar for this. Audience reaction is beyond stellar. Everything's stellar. Like, what more is there to say about that? So that's a definite pro right there. Reviews, audience reaction are spectacular, to say the least. So yeah, pro right there. That's pro number 5. Pro number 6 has a very wide release. Very wide release. We're talking like well over 4,000 theaters. Like 4,300 something theaters, which means that this movie was built to be a big old blockbuster, and it will be a big old blockbuster. But the fact that it has this many theaters proves that. So yeah, very wide release, pro. So that's pro number 6. Pro number 7. Obviously, the marketing for this movie has been just been on it, just on it since the get go. Once we got that first trailer in September, it has just, and especially the past month, it's just been ad everywhere you look. You will see a Spider-Man ad. They are pushing this movie like there's no tomorrow, which makes sense considering this is like a big old movie in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, like the ads and everything, like how much how many ads I've seen. Like everyone knows this movie's coming out, so it doesn't have a problem with like publicity. So so the high publicity is another pro. Eighth pro here. This is obviously, in the past, in the history of December, we usually have the big movie of the month. Like even going back to like say the early 2000s, we have the Lord of the Rings trilogy. 2005 actually had two technically in the forms of Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, and King Kong. 2007 had I Am Legend. 2009 had Avatar. 2010 kinda had Tron Legacy, but that didn't work out too great. It still did fine, but it wasn't like the big hit that they probably wanted it to be. 2012 through 2012, 2013, 2014 had the Hobbit trilogy. 2015 had Force Awakens. 2016 had Rogue One. 2017 had Last Jedi. 2018 had Aquaman. 2019 had Rise of Skywalker. We don't talk about 2020. And now we're here. And it's obvious Spider Man No Way Home is built as the big December movie on the same level, especially the recent Star Wars movies. Like, no question. So yeah, I think that's gonna help it because this movie is an event, is an absolute event. The most anticipated movie since Endgame. We haven't had a movie that's hyped in so long. It feels almost foreign in a way. Like it's wild. And yeah, like this being built as the big December release, the big movie of the holidays is again only going to help it. So that's a pro right there. So I think we're our ninth pro now. um, let's see, what else can I say that I haven't said yet? Trying to think of anything else, anything major. Huh. Yeah, I think that's it. Off the I think. I think. Oh, we had the trailer. Well, I can mention this for the trailer view counts. The trailer view counts for this are just out of this world. Like the amount of, I mean, like when the first trailer debuted, like in September, like it had a record for a trailer debut. Like it beat Endgame, which I was just like, okay, this movie might be bigger than big when it comes out. I mean, that proves that there's some serious hype surrounding this. And since then, the hype is only escalated. The second trailer had a shit ton of views, and it's just madness right now. And yeah, like those trailer views really just showed me just this thing is a big, big fucking deal. So yeah, the trailer views and how many views those trailers got prove out a shadow of a doubt this was going to be a big old deal. So that's another pro. Any other pros? I guess the competition. There is competition, which I will talk about with cons, but this is guaranteed to be number one for the rest of the year until like maybe Scream beats it. I think, but yeah, it's just gonna be number one with a vengeance for the rest of the year, the rest of the holiday season. So yeah, that's another pro right there. Uh, I think that, well, I guess I can mention the holidays too are really gonna help this movie. This movie's gonna have some big ass weekday numbers, like some insanely large weekday numbers, I imagine. So yeah, that's only gonna help it again. I think that's it for pros. Now with cons, the cons do not apply to opening weekend. They do apply to the next weekend. But even these cons are kind of temporary cons. They're not long-term cons. But yeah, the biggest cons I see with this movie has nothing to do with the movie itself. It has to do with everything else surrounding it. Obviously, there's competition coming up. You know, Wednesday, it's going to get pretty serious. I mean, we got Sing 2, we got Matrix Resurrections. I don't see either of those movies being slouches. Kingsman, yeah, that's going to, I don't think that's going to do very well. But Matrix Resurrections and Sing 2 have a definite chance of cutting into this movie's box office a little bit. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. So that's con number one. You know, some competition. Not too extreme, but it will hurt it a little bit. But what's really going to hurt this movie in the short run is that con number two is next weekend, particularly with that Friday. Because Friday this year is Christmas Eve. Now, Christmas Eve is one of the worst days of the year for the box office, easily. I think the only holidays that are worse or about as bad are 4th of July on a weekend and Halloween on a weekend. You know, Christmas Eve, I mean, if it's on a weekday, like whatever, it's just a minor speed bump. But on a weekend, it can be disastrous. And with Spider-Man No Way Home is likely going to have one of the worst Friday to Friday drops in history. History. It's probably going to be between 80 and 90% dip on from Friday to Friday. And that's not even going to be the movie's fault. That's just going to be circumstance. You know, where Christmas Eve lands. But I believe it will recover soon after that. With Christmas, the day after Christmas, and the rest of the holidays, it'll recover quickly. But that Friday, next Friday, is going to be so bad. Not just for this movie, but for all movies. No movie benefits from Christmas Eve ever. So yeah, that's gonna be a rough time. But again, it's only temporary. It's only for one day, so it's not even gonna matter that much in the grand scheme of things. But still, it's something to look out for. But yeah, I think that's it with cons. Well, I guess obviously like there's gonna be a lot of high demand. This movie's gonna be front loaded, but literally all MCU movies tend to be quite front loaded, especially opening weekends. So that's not gonna be a surprise. And with like the positive word of mouth, I feel this is gonna play very well throughout the holidays. So again, it's gonna have some initial front loading, but it will level out as time goes on. And once you get past, the bloodbath that is Christmas Eve, it will just keep on rolling for the rest of the year and the beginning of part of next year. So yeah. So yeah, that's it for pros and cons. Now, opening weekend. Ooh. It's gonna open above 100 million. That's guaranteed. That's more than guaranteed. And the thing is with December, the big four December movies have all been Star Wars movies. Like the top one was Force Awakens with 248. Last Jedi had 220. Rise of Skywalker had 177, I think. And Rogue One had 155. I think Spider-Man Far From Home might be in between Rogue One and not Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. That's where I see it. But it could go higher if the movie is even bigger than the hype, which is reasonable. It's definitely possible now, more possible than ever. But I'm gonna go with 150. I think it can beat Spider-Man 3's record for the franchise and for Sony. I think it can beat it. But I'm gonna go with 150 just to be a little generous. And then total, I don't think it's gonna have big old holiday legs like some other movies because again, it's gonna have some initial front loading. But I think it will be the biggest Spider-Man movie ever domestically. Because the record right now, I think I have to find it. I wish I'm pretty sure I can find it somewhere. Spider-Man. Spider-Man, look it up. If I look up the franchise. Spider-Man, there we go. There we go. Yeah. Well, it's not on here. We haven't seen like official. Well, we've seen some overseas box office numbers, and those numbers are crazy. And the weekend hasn't even started yet. So again, that's another. That's just another indicator of how big this movie's gonna be. But ignoring Venom, Venom doesn't quite count here because it's a spinoff. But look at opening weekends for Spider-Man movies. It's a little challenging because some have opened on Friday, some have opened on Tuesday, and one is open on Wednesday. Like Spider-Man, Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man Homecoming all open on a Friday. Spider-Man 2 open on a Wednesday. An Amazing Spider-Man and Far From Home open on Tuesdays. Yes, yeah. Spider-Man 2 was Wednesday. Oh, and Enter the Spider-Verse was also Friday, but as you can see, it's not I don't know if it's super comparable here. Even though it also came out in December, funny enough. So, yeah, but I think it's more I think it would be better to compare it with the live action movies. So yeah, Spider-Man 3, 151 million for opening weekend. And then total, the biggest is still the original Spider-Man from '02 with $403 million domestically. This movie should just speed past that. I see it making more. I see it becoming the biggest Spider-Man movie ever in the States. I don't know about inflation though. That might be a little difficult. I don't think it's gonna reach inflation levels because I'm pretty sure it should be quite high for the original few Spider-Mans. But for when it in raw dollars, it should beat it. But I'm thinking a final total of Okay, a final total of between 500 and 600 million domestic. That's where I'm seeing this movie. That's where I see it landing, which means it'll be one of the biggest movies of all time domestically, which is great because the movie's really, really, really good. It's a wild ride. A lot happens. Please watch it. Just please. You will, if you are a Spider-Man fan, you will be greatly satisfied. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, you have to watch the movie for yourself to know what I'm talking about. But yeah, domestically, this should destroy the Spider-Man record. um, I don't know about overseas. Overseas is looking very strong now too. So this should make $1 billion easy, and it should because it deserves it. And yeah, that's it for Spider-Man. Oh, that was a lot. That was a whole lot to go through, but I did it. So that was Spider Man. That's the end of the weekend, but it's not the end of the holiday season. No, no, no. We got a bunch of movies coming up next weekend, starting from December 22nd. The King's Man, Major's Resurrections, Sing 2, maybe even The Tender Bar. I don't know about that, but I know King's Man, Matrix, Sing 2, they're all guaranteed. And then Christmas Day, that's Saturday, which is again really just weird. I don't. Why does it have to be this way? But we got American Underdog, Journal for Jordan, Licorice Pizza. And I've already said for December 22nd movies, I'm going to be coming on the 21st, that Tuesday. Then for the Christmas movies, I'm going to be covering them the 23rd, that Thursday. Because I don't feel like uploading on a Christmas Eve. I'd rather not do that. And yeah, that's it for 2021. After that, and then on to 2022 we go. So yeah, we're like in the home stretch at this point. But yeah, anywho, yeah, that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. Want to check out all the videos I made, for box office predictions, go right ahead. All the predictions I made this year, particularly the MCU ones, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals. Watch those videos. Even the Suicide Squad, because that movie needs love. Okay, please. But yeah, if you want to watch any of those, any of the big superhero movies, and Venom 2, how can I forget that? Which is, well, I don't want to say anything. I think I've said too much just saying that. But yeah, if you want to see my prediction videos for those movies, you can go right ahead. And I didn't even mention on Spider-Man No Way Home, the type of movie it is. It's the type of movie that's been doing exceedingly well in the pandemic. It's focused on like males between 18 and 34. It's a big franchise film. So it was guaranteed to succeed no matter what. So yeah, if you want to watch any of the past prediction videos I made, particularly the MCU ones I've done, you can go right ahead. There's also the Cancel series where I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. I've covered Spider-Man No Way Home twice, and it was originally supposed to come out in this July. Then it got pushed back to November, and then it got pushed back to now. So this movie was always meant to be a 2021 movie. It just got pushed back several months. But so yeah, and those were like very early on the Cancel series. We're talking episode 8, episode 14. This is a long time ago. But yeah, if you want to watch those videos where it was just like grouped in with a whole bunch of other movies, you want to watch those videos and any other canceled episode, because I made two yesterday alone. I did one about Operation Fortune getting delayed, and the next one I did about the Black Phone getting delayed. And these movies were supposed to come out very soon, so yeah, that concerns me a little bit. But if you want to watch any of the past canceled episodes I've done, all 97 episodes at this point, the way you're updating all these movies, where they're going, if they're going to streaming, when they're coming out, all that jazz, you can watch them all right now. Trust me, you have plenty to choose from. And then for box office recaps, I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. No, not that. Supposed to cover all the movies that came out in a particular month. December recap will come out within the new year, first week of the new year. Then I'm gonna do a two-part 2021 recap. One part will be theatrical, one part will be streaming, because as you know, this year's been very chaotic with the line being blurred between theatrical and streaming. No Way Home is obviously theatrical only, but we got Matrix Resurrections, the final movie of the HBO Max experiment, so we're not done with streaming. Not by a long shot. Especially what's been going on next year. But it's not as bad as it was this year. Like this year was just very bizarre. But if you want to watch any, yeah, stay tuned for all those videos, the two-part recap and the December recap. But if you want to watch any of the past recap videos I made, particularly the ones I've done this year, where you just see how things have just evolved throughout the year, it's very interesting. You can watch that, watch those, and go right ahead. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.